Welcome to today's episode of the Analytics Excellence webinar series. Today we will be talking about using analytics as a patent annuity decision tool, presented by Tom Marlowe. Tom?
Hi, thanks. So my name is Tom Marlowe. I'm president of Black Hills IP Renewals, where we deal with a lot of annuity-related decisions. Formerly, I ran the IP department at Fairchild Semiconductor. We had about 5,000 patents globally to manage, so as you can imagine, a few annuity decisions to make there on a fairly regular basis. And also formerly, I was the co-chair of the patent portfolio management and analytics group with the Schweipen firm. So first, we're going to start talking about patent annuity decision strategy. There's countless ways that companies and patent owners make annuity decisions, whether that be continuously as the annuities come up, or in monthly batches, quarterly batches, even yearly batches. Those involved can include decision makers, contributors, and stakeholders like your IP counsel, patent engineers, product managers, folks with varying levels of involvement or decision-making input at different stages. And all of this can affect the strategy that's used to make an annuity decision within a portfolio. And then, of course, strategies are going to differ as portfolios grow. Say a portfolio with about 100 patents with, let's say, 50 yearly decisions can be handled in one way, while another portfolio with about 7,000 patents and over $3 million in annual annuity costs, coming from, say, 3,500 plus yearly decisions, that's going to be another story. And then, of course, sometimes finance drives the strategy with budget limitations that are going to affect any strategy that's going to be going forward. We all know that these are important and expensive assets, patents, and for many countries, the fact that annuities are due means that the patents are issued and enforceable. So a clear strategy is important. When decisions are made, the strategy should take into account take into consideration who will be involved and how much time is going to be needed to make the right decision on time. In some countries, a late decision, meaning going into grace period, costs a little. In other countries, it can even double the cost. Across a big portfolio, that can mean a lot of money. And in rare circumstances, there's no grace period. So being late on a decision means you've got an abandoned patent. A bad decision can mean keeping a patent that's not providing value, or it can mean abandoning a patent that does add value, and really neither of these are good scenarios. A sound strategy can help minimize indecision and bad decisions, the key being able to make good decisions in an expedient manner. Analytics help tremendously on the portfolio and the single patent level. So we'll take a look at single patent based analytics first in order to drive decision making, starting with the family. The size of a family for a particular patent can be an indicator of its value, meaning at some point in that patent's life, a decision was made to spend a bunch of money to get that patent protected in multiple different jurisdictions. That spend right there is an indicator that there was some value in this patent at one time. When taking another look at a patent, because of course the value can fluctuate as time goes on and as the value of the underlying technology changes, the locations in which a patent has family members should really match the value of protecting that technology in those markets. So understanding how a patented technology applies to a product group or groups of products really will help determine if that familial spread makes sense. in a few minutes, we're going to talk a little bit about tagging the patents that you have, but having tags that match your product line, or at least your product lines, or at least your technologies, will help in this analysis. Next, and what's always a popular topic when it comes to determining a patent's value, is looking at forward citations. These are great because they can help indicate how often a patent is being cited, and also knowing who is citing your patent can be helpful. In this case, we can see in this example, we've got a bar chart that shows the number of citations that occurred across time from 1999 to 2016 on an example patent, and the colors within those bars represent companies. We can see in this example, citation peaked in 2008 and has steadily dropped off since. So what we have here is something that was clearly an important patent, or at least once was clearly an important patent. But the drop-off tells a bit of a story, and perhaps that's that this technology has been surpassed. So gives us a question mark to drive some further analysis. Another analytic that's useful is to compare the patent with others in its class in its filing year. So comparing forward citations, for example, of a recently published patent to one that's been around for a dozen years or so is not really useful, because time plays a big factor in forward citation counts. In this case, what we're looking at is a bar graph showing for a particular technology class and a particular age, so essentially filing year, group of patents, the distribution of those that have a certain count of citations. In this case, we have one that is at the top of its class, represented in the green bar. So a patent that is cited more often than others of its age in its technology class, which tells us there's probably some additional value for this patent based on this forward citation analysis. To complement the forward citation analysis, it's useful to consider the foundational nature of the patent. And sometimes that's tricky to figure out, especially when we're trying to look at it from an analytical perspective before we get into the scope of the patent claims. One way to do it, however, is to take a look at the patent's filing date within its class or within its art unit, and then overlaying the filing trend over time. And that can give us a little bit of an idea of the foundational nature of the patent. In this case, we see the patent filed in 1997 was kind of on the early end of the technology within this class. Not the most foundational, but certainly near the time where it was growing, and definitely not at its very peak. Patents that fall earlier and in times of lower filing tell a story that the patent may have set the groundwork for future filings to come. And this is especially true when you pair it with the previous slide's forward citation data. So an earlier filing, lots of forward citations, that sets a good picture. Of course, a foundational patent can have great value due to its applicability to follow-on technologies. So it's an important piece of analytics to at least be considering to move to the next step. Competitors. Obviously, we have to cover this because patents, by their very nature, are a competitive tool. Understanding competitor activity in the technological space, whether that be the technical class or the art unit, where we can get good public data, can help understand the value of the patent. So this particular patent, if I'm in the semiconductor manufacturing space, and some of my competitors are big foundries like Taiwan Semiconductor, Global Foundries, for example, I might say this is in a space where I have competitors and I want to look closely at this patent because I can see that it already may have value because I have several competitors that are working in this space as well. Now, if I were to look at another patent and see a number of companies that were not my competitors, or companies that were somewhere in the vertical supply chain, so either my suppliers or my customers, the value of that patent may differ. The next level of analysis that we can take a look at is tags, or you might call them internal categorizations, ontologies, notes. Essentially what these are custom categorizations that are going to be applied internally. In this case, applying a custom categorization can be quite valuable when analyzing your portfolio, and that value can be realized pretty immediately when reviewing a patent coming up for an annuity. I really recommend categorizing by product or by technology, and if you categorize by technology, which is sometimes even easier than product, then you can take that technology categorization and then apply it to your product lines, and apply that technology categorization to your product lines in order to get a match between your patents and your product lines. And using internal nomenclature can really help when you're trying to get input internally at your company. It really should be easy to relate a patent to a product or a development. The value here comes from being able to tie this then more easily to a revenue stream, which then allows you to more easily apply a value to that patent, which will make decision making even easier. Anytime that an internal analysis is undertaking, additionally, it's with respect to whether it be new developments, competitor activity, or patents that are going to be involved in licensing, litigation, it's worth tagging or noting on those patents so that when annuity or decision-making time comes up, you've got that information available. The next category we're going to take a look at is age. The age of the patent in some analyses can be used to help determine a valuable patent, meaning the longer that the patent is kept and paid for, the more valuable it likely is. For an internal analysis, however, you can kind of throw this practice out the window. I really recommend keeping the analysis forward-looking. Age is useful because it lets us know how much enforceable life remains for an internal analysis with respect to annuities. That time frame then defines the period in which value can be derived. Let's say, for example, you've got a patent that has 2 years remaining on its life, right? And you've got competitors that are working to develop a competing product, but they're about 2 years behind. Well, the value of this particular product or this particular patent might be limited because it's going to be expired before there's really any enforceability in it against those competitors. So perhaps there may be a deterrence value that remains, but it's going to be a lot more limited. The bottom line being, taking into account how much time is left in the patent and whether or not there's actually going to be something that can be enforced within that time period is going to be critical. The age of the patent is another analytic that's worth keeping into consideration. So in larger portfolios, aside from doing a single patent analysis on every item, bulk analytics can be extremely beneficial. Now, I do want to say rarely will I ever use a bulk analytic to make a final decision, but they're really important time savers for prioritizing the patents that are going to be reviewed for an annuity decision. All right, so to give a starting point, we're going to take a look at some bulk refinements by either technology class or art unit, tags, country. In some cases, if you've got a company with multiple subsidiaries, being able to refine by those subsidiaries or the patent owner. Here's a few examples where I've done a few example refinements. So let's say we have a portfolio of 400. In a given year, I might have 157 decisions with an all-in cost of about $131,000. And finance comes and says, you know, we've got to cut the budget by $20,000, so I've got about $110K budget this year to work with. I'm going to start taking a look first and doing some bulk refinements by some of the areas that might be the easiest for me to make some cuts. So in this particular example, let's just say Canada as a market for me has been decreasing for certain products. I've got 23 decisions. I'll do my refinement on Canada. I've got 23 decisions that roll up to about $7,300 in cost. Well, the potential savings here are fairly low compared to the number of patents, so this might not be a worthwhile starting point for me. Similarly, if my subsidiary XYZ company has been struggling, I can filter by their patents and see that I've got 45 decisions to make at a cost of, say, just over $16,000. Again, for the number of patents that have to be looked at, the cost isn't tremendous. On the other hand, when I filter by my tag of camcorders, if my camcorder division, say, is on the way out or development and sales have died off, in this case, I'm looking at a small group of expensive patents that might be an easy target to try and hit my budget numbers. So this gives me a nice prioritization of a place to start, taking a look at this particular category, because if I can abandon a few from this, it can have a larger numerical and cost impact. At the end of the day, though, with any bulk analysis, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't recommend not looking at the patent and its claim coverage. What this should be used for is to be able to do a prioritization and get down to a small number of patents that are going to be the easiest to review. At the end of the day, when it comes down to technology, when it comes down to tags, when it comes down to the art unit, for example, all of these can help us identify the patent and identify the technology that's going to be in there. But because it's a bulk analysis, that identification is going to be imprecise. It's a summary. So the claim scope of the actual patent to be abandoned, if that's the decision, is important. At the end of the day, you're going to have to take a look at that. The one exception to this would be when you're taking a look at the country. The country analysis is, by its nature, precise. We know any patent that I have categorized by a particular country is in that country. So in rare circumstances, so for example, divesting from a market entirely, a group of patent annuity decisions could be made in bulk without looking at the patents themselves if you want to do it on a country basis. That would be about my only exception that I would use to that rule. Annuity cost is probably one of the more important data points that I like to take a look at and analyze, whether we're talking about single patent or analyzing on a bulk or portfolio level. At the end of the day, cost is what the analysis is all about, and how much the annuity cost, we're talking about how much will it cost and really is that cost justified. So to begin, any group of patents to be analyzed for decisions may be immediately prioritized by their cost in order to get the most expensive ones up front so that you can have the biggest impact first. Next, one of the things that's worth taking into consideration is the value of the decision time. So figuring out who's going to be involved with the decision, how much time on average will that decision take, and then it's just a matter of doing the math to determine a cost to that decision. So if you've got an attorney and you've got a couple of engineers and a patent engineer that have to go through to make a decision on a particular patent, figuring out about their equivalent hourly value of their time and rolling that up to a cost on a per patent basis is a good place to start, because any annuities that are less expensive than that number can automatically just be paid. It's not worth the time to take to make that decision. So being able to automatically clear off of the decision plate any annuities that are below a certain value threshold can save a lot of time. And you know that the value is there because it wouldn't be worth spending that time on the analysis. And then, as long as we are talking about costs, I always like to touch on sunk costs. Some patent docketing systems and invoicing systems are really good at tracking patent spend. While that data is there, and usually I will say the more the merrier when it comes to data, I highly recommend ignoring that data. Sunk costs aren't going to provide you anything useful when it comes to making a patent annuity decision, because you want to be looking to the future with your patent annuity decisions. So if you have those in your data, I'd recommend not using them in any of your analytics. And finally, all of these analytics really allow us as decision makers to dive into a portfolio and target the decisions that are going to be the most fruitful, the ones that have the greatest economic impact, the ones that are the most time efficient, and the ones that are the easiest to justify, especially when it comes to an abandonment decision. This generally means having to examine a number of patents, but you want that examination to be of the right ones, and probably not all of the patents that are out there. The best way to use these tools is to use them together. So being able to filter by cost, country, product tag, or technology reduces the set to something that can be a lot more manageable, that presents patents with potential strikes against them already, and then can make that decision-making process a lot simpler by using this, by using a filtering method. So at the end of the day, I want to leave everybody with a brief summary of the discussion. The idea being beginning with cost prioritization and any automatic decisions that can be made because the costs are sufficiently small. Then working through prioritizations, focusing on those that are most likely to have low value to the company. So focusing on product lines that are on their way out or being divested, focusing on technology areas that are old or have been surpassed or not being used by the company or by competitors anymore, focusing on countries that represent markets of lower value going forward. When you get down to, once you've done that prioritization, getting down to the patent level, looking at the family coverage, including taking a look at recent decisions regarding family members, looking at citations and the foundational nature will help really set the stage for making a final decision that's based on the ultimate claim scope of the patents being kept or being abandoned. And with that, I'd like to open up to any questions. Trying to see if we have any questions. And if any questions come up after, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to talk about this topic offline as well. And looks like we have our next presentation in this webinar series entitled Using Patent Prosecution Analytics to Determine Prosecution Efficiency and Waste and Manage Prosecution, which is coming up in about a month. All right, thanks everybody.
We have one question.
Oh, all right.
Someone raised their hand. We have one question from Stephen, and he asked, do you distinguish inventor citations from examiner citations in determining value of forward citations?
I guess the answer to that is sometimes. So in certain circumstances, I would say yes. In that the inventor citations, especially when they are to a patent owned by the same company, are going to be of slightly less value than examiner citations or even in applicant citations that are from an external company. So I guess it's less so the examiner versus applicant citations, and more so the ones that are internal, same company citations versus external citations. Looks like we have another question. Have you experienced an issue of a subsidiary being sold for a lower value due to annuities not being paid? I haven't. I've gone through a number of M&A transactions. I haven't seen one that specifically turned out that way. If it was a case of the annuities not being paid and the patents going abandoned, so there were less patent assets involved in the sale, then I would definitely see the sale price being affected by that. But just the fact that the annuities haven't been paid and ultimately need to be paid by the purchasing party, interestingly enough, that seems to get overlooked a lot in the transaction, and it's usually not till the kind of the end of the deal that that comes up. When savvy parties are involved with the transaction, usually a annuity payment cutoff date is defined, and in any M&A transaction, I highly recommend early on determining one, the patents that are going to be involved in the transaction and the responsibility cutoff, so that that's clear. But as far as it really affecting the price, I haven't seen too much. I haven't seen an instance where that's happened. Usually the price is sufficiently higher than the annuity value, but I could see circumstances where that would be the case. And then we have another question. What tool are you using to get the graphics? And the graphics that I've used in this webinar are from a tool called Patent Buddy, which is a tool made and developed by Black Hills IP. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a good day.